We are also getting new information about the young woman who was killed after a fight led to gunfire at an Orlando apartment complex.
Orlando police announcing a second arrest in a deadly quadruple shooting at an apartment complex. And today he should face a judge.
She was making strides to better herself as a whole, better herself personally, better herself as a mother, and better herself as a stylist.
Oh, another fight, look. Oh. Oh, Lord, they done fucked this girl up, boy. Oh, hold up. That nigga out here. What they got fight? Oh, my fucking God. Girl.
Have you seen my lady?
Oh my, I ain't even got my phone. Oh, this girl, bro. Oh my God, what?
I need you to be honest with me. How many of those people filming do you think called 911? How many tried to stop what was happening? Because what you just witnessed isn't just murder. It's what happens when an audience becomes complicit in tragedy. But before we start pointing fingers at everybody else, we need to talk about something that's gonna make some of y'all uncomfortable. Because here's the thing, and I need y'all to really hear me on this. 3 weeks before she died, someone warned Michaela, told her they had a bad feeling, told her to be careful, and she hit them back with, "Girl, I am blessed. God got me." Now, I believe God protects his children. I really do. But you know what? God also gave us wisdom, intuition, and common sense for a reason. Sometimes the protection he's giving you is that warning from a friend. Sometimes his voice sounds like your gut telling you to stay home that day. The good die young, ladies. We all know that. But that doesn't mean we should make it easy for them. Don't be walking into situations where someone might have to ask God for forgiveness later. Because funny enough, he will forgive them. But you might not be here to see it. You're on TikTok Crimes. We cover what happens when social media fame turns fatal. TikTok stars, Instagram couples, Facebook influencers. When their posts become crime scenes, we break down exactly what went wrong. These aren't just viral stories. These are real murders, real victims. Subscribe right now if you want the truth behind the trending hashtags, because by the time something goes viral, somebody's usually already dead. Here's what happened. So let me tell you about Michaela Queen Patterson. Ruby Keogh to her clients. A woman who was building something beautiful, right up until the moment everything went wrong. 22 years old, but her hands already had that magic touch that turned damaged hair into art. You know those stylists who don't just fix your hair? They fix your whole mood? That was Michaela. She'd have you walking out of that chair feeling like you could conquer the world. Her salon setup wasn't fancy. We're talking about a young single mom working out of rental spaces and taking appointments wherever she could set up her kit. But honey, talent doesn't need a fancy address. Her Instagram was already hitting 11,000 followers. And those weren't just random people clicking follow. These were women waiting weeks to get in her chair. Ruby Keogh wasn't just a cute business name either. This woman had registered Kiosco, LLC. She was thinking bigger than just hair. She was building a brand. And if you've ever tried to juggle being a mother, running a business, and building an online presence all at the same time, you know that takes a special kind of determination. But here's what really drove her. 2 little boys. Messiah, 5 years old, and Zion, 4.
Stop! Wait!
The thing is, this is not what I want a picture of.
You know how some mothers work just to get by? Michaela was working to build something these boys could be proud of. Her Instagram wasn't filled with party pics and drama. It was scripture, tea, hair transformations, and pictures of her babies. This wasn't some woman living recklessly, yo. This was a woman with a plan. The kind of woman who posts Bible verses between client photos, who thanks God for every booking, every new follower, every small step forward. Which brings us back to that warning 3 weeks before everything fell apart. Because somebody who cared about Michaela reached out, sent her a message that should have saved her life. I know what it is, Ruby, but I had a bad feeling. Just be careful. Now, when someone takes time out of their day to warn you about danger, what do? Most of us would at least ask what they're seeing that we're not, right? But Michaela? She hit them back with laughing emojis. Girl, I'm blessed. God got me. And here's where it gets complicated, because I don't want y'all thinking I'm judging her faith. But there's a difference between trusting God and testing God. When someone who knows your situation tells you to be careful, maybe that's not fear talking, maybe that's discernment. Because as September 2023 rolled around, everything in Michaela's life was pointing up. Her oldest had just started kindergarten. You know what a big deal that is for any mama. More time to focus on building the business. Her bookings were filling up weeks in advance. The woman was literally living her dream. Just days before September 22nd, she was posting about October appointments. Get in before the glow-up train leaves, she wrote. Does that sound like someone living in fear? This sounds like someone who believed good things were finally coming her way. But you know what they say about when things are going too well. So what brought a successful hairstylist and devoted mother to that apartment complex on Mercy Drive? A place locals didn't even call by its real name anymore. They called it Murder Drive. And on September 22nd, 2023, at 2:30 in the afternoon, that nickname proved itself true. September 22nd, 2023 started like any other Friday for Michaela. But you know how some days just feel different from the moment you wake up? Your spirit feels unsettled for no reason you can name. Well, if Michaela felt that way, she pushed through it anyway. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, she found herself at Jernigan Gardens Apartments on Mercy Drive. Now, this wasn't her neighborhood. This wasn't where she lived or worked. So the question everybody keeps asking is simple. What was the successful hairstylist doing in a place even the locals called Murder Drive? The official story? She was there to handle some kind of personal situation. But let's be real. We've all had those moments where someone drags us into their mess. And before you know it, you're standing somewhere you have no business being. Sometimes loyalty puts you in harm's way. What we know for certain is this. Just after 2 p.m., Michaela made a phone call that would change everything. She called her cousin Devin Gaines, and her voice wasn't calm anymore. "Come get me," she said. "I'm getting jumped." Now, when someone calls you crying for help, your first instinct is probably to ask questions, right? Where are you? How many people? Should I call the police? But when family calls panicking, logic goes out the window. Devin didn't hesitate. He grabbed Michaela's brother, and they both headed straight for Mercy Drive. Here's what I need y'all to understand, though. And this is where it gets complicated. When someone calls saying they're getting jumped, they're usually outnumbered. They're usually in real danger. But rushing into that danger without a plan? That's how one victim becomes 3 victims. Jernigan Gardens wasn't just any apartment complex. This place had a reputation that preceded it. 3 shootings in 2 weeks, leading up to this incident. The kind of place where arguments didn't stay verbal for long, where people settled disputes with their hands first. And if that didn't work, they escalated. By the time Devon and Michaela's brother pulled up, there was already a crowd gathered in the courtyard. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and the energy is just wrong? The air was thick with tension. People were choosing sides, and phones were already out, not to call for help, but to record whatever was about to happen. Because that's what we do now, isn't it? Someone's in trouble, and our first instinct is to pull out a camera instead of calling 911. We've turned other people's worst moments into our entertainment. What started this whole mess was apparently a dispute between women. The details of what they were fighting about, honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that when women fight, it usually stays between the women, pulling hair, throwing punches, maybe some scratches. Messy, but rarely deadly. But when men decide to get involved in women's business, that's when things go left real quick. And when those men happen to be carrying guns, well, you already saw how that story ends. The footage shows Michaela getting thrown to the ground by a man. Not pushed, thrown, like she was a rag doll. But here's the thing about Michaela that tells you everything about her character. She got back up, smaller than him, outweighed by probably 60 pounds. But she stood up and kept fighting. Some people might call that stupid. I call it spirit. The question is, when do you fight and when do you walk away? While this fight was happening, something else was brewing in that courtyard. 2 young men, 23-year-old Delray Duncan and 18-year-old Gary Williams, were moving differently than everyone else. They weren't trying to break up the fight. They weren't filming like the others. They were positioning themselves. Duncan lived at Jernigan Gardens, so this was his territory. Williams was just 18, probably still living with his mama. But somehow he thought he was qualified to handle grown folks' business. Neither one of them knew Michaela personally. Neither one had any real stake in whatever started this fight. But they both had guns. And apparently, they both had egos that were bigger than their common sense. When Devon and Michaela's brother arrived, they weren't coming to join a fight. They were coming to get their family member out of danger. But you know how it is. When family shows up, the other side feels like the stakes just got raised. What started as women arguing had now become a family affair. Devon saw his cousin getting manhandled by a grown man and did what most of us would do. He moved to help her. But that's when Delray Duncan made the worst decision of his life. Instead of letting family handle family, he opened fire. One shot, then another, then chaos. Gary Williams, standing just feet away from Michaela, didn't see a woman trying to get out of a bad situation. He saw an opportunity to prove something. 1 bullet to the back of her head, execution style, in broad daylight, with dozens of witnesses. And through all of this, people kept filming. The Facebook live stream that started during the fight didn't stop when the shooting started. Hearts and laugh-crying emojis were still floating across the screen while Michaela was bleeding out on concrete. You want to know what's wrong with our society? It's that moment right there. When someone's dying becomes your content. When human tragedy becomes your entertainment. When clicking "Go Live" matters more than calling for help. After the gunshots stopped, the panic set in. People scattered, but not everyone. Some stood around taking pictures. Others helped the wounded. A few finally thought to call 911. Michaela lay unconscious, bleeding from her head. Devin was shot multiple times, but somehow still breathing. Duncan had been hit in the leg during the shootout. And Gary Williams? He just melted into the crowd like nothing happened. 3 ambulances, police sirens. The kind of chaos that makes you wonder how a simple argument turned into a war zone. What happened next is hard to make out clearly from the footage. About 3 or 4 people surrounded Michaela after she was shot, but they were too far from the camera to see exactly what they were doing. Were they trying to help? Just standing there in shock? Your guess is as good as mine. All we know for certain is that by the time paramedics arrived, it was already too late. While Michaela was fighting for her life in the ambulance, Orlando police were already moving. They had a description of a black Chevy sedan that fled the scene, and within minutes, they spotted it. Police quickly located the black Chevy and initiated a pursuit that ended at Old Winter Garden Road and Duncan Place. And yes, the irony of Duncan ending up on Duncan Place wasn't lost on anybody. Inside that Chevy, Delray Duncan, bleeding from his leg.
Then, while police were at the complex, they say they were notified of a possible suspect vehicle that fled the scene. This led them on a chase that ended here, Old Winter Garden Road and Duncan Place. This black Chevy was seen with significant damage to the front and what appears to be blood outside of it.
Duncan was arrested that same day. First-degree murder charges, attempted murder, being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. Because apparently, this wasn't his first rodeo with the law. No bail, no going home, no second chances. But here's where things get interesting. Duncan might have been the one shooting at Devin, but he wasn't the one who killed Michaela. That honor belonged to 18-year-old Gary Williams, who had somehow vanished into thin air after pulling that trigger. For 11 days, this kid was ghost. No social media activity, no credit card usage, no cell phone pings. Either he was smarter than he looked, or someone was helping him hide. My money's on the latter, because most 18-year-olds can't stay off their phones for 11 hours, let alone 11 days. Orlando PD's fugitive unit finally caught up with him on October 3rd. No dramatic shootout, no resistance, just handcuffs and silence. Funny how tough guys become real quiet when they realize their actions have consequences. First-degree murder with a firearm. That's life without parole territory in Florida. Not exactly the future this young man probably imagined for himself 3 weeks earlier. But the story doesn't end there. Months later, and I'm talking months, police arrested a third shooter. Christian Childs, also 18, picked up in March 2024, 6 months after the fact. Now, this tells us something important. Investigators spent half a year going through footage, tracking digital footprints and building cases. Childs wasn't just some bystander who got caught up. Police say he was armed. He fired shots. He was part of the violence that took Michaela's life. 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, shooting into buildings, discharging firearms on residential property. The charges stack up like pancakes, and none of them are pretty. All 3 men pleaded not guilty. Of course they did. When you're facing life sentences, you try every angle, every technicality, every possible defense. But here's the thing about shooting someone on Facebook Live with multiple camera angles. It's pretty hard to claim you weren't there. The evidence isn't just overwhelming, it's embarrassing. Surveillance footage, social media videos, witness testimony, ballistics, DNA. Prosecutors have more evidence than they know what to do with. These men basically documented their own crimes and handed police the conviction on a silver platter. While these three sit in jail pointing fingers at each other, Michaela's family is trying to pick up the pieces. Her grandmother now raises those two little boys, Messiah and Zion. Her mother visits an empty salon chair where that pink neon sign still glows. Ruby Kayor.
She was making strides to better herself as a whole, better herself personally, better herself as a mother, and better herself as a stylist.
22-year-old Michaela Patterson, who was known to many as Ruby, was a mother of two and worked at this Orlando hair salon for the past 8 months.
This is Ruby's suite.
The same suite where people have been dropping off flowers to show their respects. Her co-workers say she wanted to be a celebrity hairstylist and strengthen her faith.
We spoke on her spiritual journey. She said she wanted to have a better relationship with God.
Those boys will grow up knowing their mama was murdered by strangers over something that had nothing to do with her. They'll see the footage someday. They'll read the comments. They'll have to live with the fact that their mother's death became entertainment for people who never knew her name. But here's what I need y'all to understand. This wasn't inevitable. This wasn't destiny. This was choice after choice after choice, all leading to tragedy. Michaela chose to ignore a warning. She chose to go to that apartment complex. She chose to fight instead of walking away. Duncan chose to bring a gun to a fist fight. He chose to shoot at someone trying to protect family. Williams chose to execute a woman who posed no threat to him. He chose to become a murderer at 18 years old. Every single person with a phone chose to film instead of calling 911. And the audience watching that Facebook Live? They chose to treat someone's death like entertainment. So here's what I want you to think about as you go about your day. When you see trouble brewing, what do you choose? When someone asks for help, how do you respond? When you witness violence, is your first instinct to document it or stop it? Because we're living in a world where everything is content, where every moment is potential viral material, where other people's pain becomes our entertainment. And until we're willing to put the phones down and actually help each other, we're all complicit in creating the environment that killed Michaela Patterson. Michaela wanted to be a celebrity hairstylist. She wanted to build something her boys could be proud of. She wanted to touch people's lives and make them beautiful. She never wanted to be famous for dying on camera. But that's her legacy now. A cautionary tale about social media, about violence, about the dangers of choosing spectacle over human decency. A reminder that your worst moment might become someone else's entertainment. And the people watching might care more about the algorithm than your actual life. The concrete at Jernigan Gardens has been cleaned. The Facebook Live has been deleted. The news cycle has moved on. But somewhere in Orlando, two little boys are asking their grandmother when Mama's coming home. And that neon sign, Ruby Kayor, it's still glowing pink, still waiting for hands that will never come back. Sleep tight. We'll see you next time.